We have time for questions. Anybody have questions? Yes, sir.
For Tom, maybe if you could step up for a second. One question and a follow-up. Your figures for median price statewide of 2010 were 215, but you said they were slightly off from this year, for this year so far, from that figure?
Correct. Approximately $7,700 from last year.
So that's a very small percentage?
Percentage? I can look it up way here. I do have it. You can get it by later if you want me to look it up now.
No, sorry. About 8,000, a little less than 8,000 less.
$7,700.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was the status of this legislation, if any, which I'm not familiar with, to do away with the mortgage interest deduction. Can you maybe summarize where that stands right now?
There's no legislation proposed yet. It's now in the budgets that are being proposed. The president's budget, the different senator budget. So it's all in the discussion stages in national. What we like to do is try to squish it up front, saying we don't even want you to discuss it, take it off the table. And we're doing that through the congressmen and senators through a grassroots effect. But yes, it was in the, I think it was in the president's budget reduction and the Republicans' reduction. So there's two of them.
Do you have an optimistic feeling maybe we'll be able to squash it?
What did he say? Congress? I like Peter's quote in Congress. Who knows what Congress is going to do? We do. We're very optimistic. We're hoping we can squish it before it gets too far. It's just too valuable to the public.
Okay. If it did pass in some form, can you analyze what kind of impact it would have on home sales in the state?
I don't have those statistics.
Well, I mean, you know, your visceral feeling about it.
Well, it would have a substantial impact on the value of homes, and it would have a substantial impact on the economy because the actual cash you have in your hands to go out and spend. So the economy would come down, and the value of your long-term asset retirement would go down. The actual number of sales, I don't have those statistics. I'll be more than happy to try to get them for you. I'm sure someplace between Washington and Chicago they do have them available.
Well, that would be moot anyway if this legislation wasn't either
exactly.
enacted or even introduced.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was wondering if you could comment specifically on two sources of risk in the real estate sector. The availability of reliable, good-paying jobs, and the availability of responsible lending given the meltdown of the financial service sector and only one person going to jail around that. Maybe that could happen again. So to sell homes, you need buyers and credit. So how might we think about those two things being available?
Yes. Well, we have buyers, and credit is available, yet they've raised the standards back to normal standards.
The job statistics have come out from national, and basically in 2010, we added 1 million jobs. We need 3 million jobs to sustain the economy. So we're down substantially in the United States. I don't have the specifics, and like Peter said, they're going to come out shortly in New Hampshire. But so far in 2011, they're predicting that we'll have 2 million new jobs. So at that rate, it's going to take about 6.5 years for total employment to be back where we were prior to the recession. But New Hampshire had 71% New Hampshire had a 71% job growth over the past 30 years. Again, that echoes what Peter was saying.
I don't care how many millions of jobs the country needs. Our unemployment rate is way lower than the national rate, substantially lower, has been lower on a regular basis. And that index of economic performance that Federal Reserve Bank includes unemployment rate and how low it is in the state. That's why the index is so high. We are way better off than the rest of the country, and whatever happens to jobs in Arizona and New Mexico and California in particular, and down in Florida, has no bearing on real estate values and real estate sales here in New Hampshire. The thing to pay attention to is job growth in New Hampshire, and specifically job growth in the Seacoast and at Pease. Because the jobs that are created in New Hampshire, generally speaking, are higher paying jobs than they are in these other states and other places. Our educational level is again very high compared to the rest of the nation. We have a higher skilled workforce and are likely to recover quicker. I'm not impressed when somebody tells me it's going to take 6.5 years for the nation to get back to its full employment. I care about New Hampshire. Well, I do, but you know, that's their problem, not my problem.
It's a pretty good bet that Peter is not going to be moving to Nevada or Arizona. So pretty soon, he wants to have good news. Yes.
So, Jim, I have a question for Peter, and that is, if we are doing better off than the rest of New England, well, which we are, what is it? Why are we losing our young workforce to the south and the west, where many of those states are the ones that are having? Is it just strictly because our housing prices are so high?
No. We have to look in the mirror and realize that if you go around the state, which I've done when we were showing the movie, and talk to people, you find that there is a distinct bias in the state, and this is true in the rest of New England as well, we're not alone, a distinct bias against young people. I've had people who should know better to come up to me and said, people in their 20s, they're just a cost here. We don't need them. We got to educate their kids. We got to pay for schools. And God, it's just killing me. My property taxes are going up. My kids have long left school. I don't want to pay for somebody else's kids to go to school. And so all the screaming and the yelling about property taxes is school taxes. And so I've had people literally come up to me at realtor meetings up in the North Country, annual meetings, and say, guy moved in down the street with 3 kids, I know my property taxes are going through the roof. They keep blaming children for their high property taxes, and they don't want any more families with children. So when a housing development comes up, they either buy up the land for conservation, or they make it prohibitively expensive for the developer to build those new homes. And so we have to confront ourselves. We have a bias against families with children. Given the choice between affordable housing or age-restricted housing, which clearly discriminates against them, we'll always go for the age-restricted housing. Always. Every time. And it's killing us. This Sunday, in the New York Times, myself and Dr. Singer, Dr. Carl Singer, who's a physician here at Exeter, have a joint article about the economic disaster that's coming about 20 years down the road, when all these baby boomers get into their 70s and 80s and need extraordinarily expensive medical care. And we do not have the young adults here to pay for that. So we may be saving a couple of bucks short term, but we think we are on our property taxes. We don't have to educate their kids. But you watch when the 2010 census comes out, how far our child population has dropped. And that's our future. And our future has left. We got to figure out a way to bring them back, because we don't have a lot of time. We can bring them back, but we have to bring them back in their minds and bring them back in terms of attitude and say, we welcome families with children, because North Carolina loves children. They love families with children because they know that's the key to their future economic prosperity. We don't.
Thank you, that's very familiar, now that you say it.
Everybody go home and make a baby.
I live in Nobody likes kids there either.
Any other questions?
This one for Peter, right? John, right? I just wondered, John, if you take a few seconds to express your views about your optimism or pessimism about. You got a good start in the Seacoast towns, but what is your feeling about the rest of the year? What is your prediction?
Well, we don't have, no one has a crystal ball, but as someone who's been maintaining statistics for 3 or 4 years, when I see a pretty solid start, both in in our 9 sample Seacoast towns and overall, and consistency of number of sales being the same as it was this year as last, and the traditional bounce that we get if we have a strong first quarter, I have to be somewhat optimistic about the coming year. because of that, number one, and also I think with interest rates as low as they are, I think that adds fuel to the fire. And lastly, I think that the availability of inventory in all price ranges is another good thing. So you combine all those things, and the snow melting, there has to be some optimism out there.
Thank you.
Last chance?
One more? Right here, sure.
One of the first speakers talked about the New Hampshire advantage of not having a sales tax or income tax. But we're also just talking about discouragement of families, young people staying in the state. So would anyone care to comment on the structural discouragement of having young people be in the state with having our reliance on a property tax?
Jim, let me address that.
Yeah.
We have these discussions all the time with clients in commercial, and the one statistic that people refuse to cite because favorable is New Hampshire, in spite of all the other taxes that we have, is still one of the lowest per capita states in the country. It used to be first. I don't think that's still the case, Peter, but it's in the top 5 or 6. So this nonsense about our property taxes are too high, you have to look at the total per capita. And as George Ball, the Commissioner of Economic Development, says to people when they ask, coming in from out of state, well, what are you going to give us to come here? He says, it's not what we give you, it's what we save you.
Anybody else? Thank you all for coming. Thank our distinguished panel.